Let's sit nice and tall. Let's close the eyes. And just take a moment to be. And to establish yourself in such a way that you are completely present in this moment. No coming or going. No past or future. No what was or what will be. Just now. No past, no future. No what was, no what will be. Just now. And just notice if there's a freedom associated with that. Scan your body head to toe and notice how you are right now. Scan the mind. Notice how the mind is right now. Become aware of your whole being. Notice that wholeness right now. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. And with gratitude for that wholeness, we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Om. Bowing the head toward the heart. And then drawing the face to center, releasing the hands. And welcome. So good to see you all today. So good to be here with you. So as you went through that, even though it was a very short little concentration, as you went through that and you discarded the past and let go of the future, as you stopped concerning yourself with what was and what will be, when you continually brought yourself now, did you feel freedom? Yeah. Do you feel like, I'm okay? In this moment, I'm really okay. Key teaching in yoga, that is always the truth. That's always the truth. You're always okay. It's like when we're sitting in this moment. So a moment is not time, right? So we live life by time. We say, I was born in such a year, I got this injury that year, that injury that year, that experience that year. We do tend to measure our life by our injuries and our experiences, don't we? Injury vacation. Maybe a little love in there somewhere, But typically speaking, it's the injuries and the vacations that we measure time by. And then, someday we're no longer in this body. And that's the way we see time as a linear pathway that we walk. And typically, 80 to 100 years, right? For this particular time anyway. But a moment is not part of that. The moment is not part of a linear timeline. The moment is deep. The moment is expansive. The moment is the universe. So on the one hand, we have this linear timeline that we walk, which has a definitive beginning and a definitive end. And then on the other hand, spiritually speaking, we have a moment which is timeless. It has no beginning, it has no end. It's just everything. And in that space, you are okay. Because nothing that happens on the linear timeline can affect it. Nothing that happens on the linear timeline impacts the moment. Because when we're in the moment, we're in such a state of now that even the passage of man-made time, it doesn't affect the truth of who we really are. This body is not who we really are. These hands, these feet, these clothes, this personality is not this hair. This is not who I really am, and it is not who you really are either. The truth of you can't be seen. It can be witnessed in the goodness of your actions, but it can't be seen. Because the truth of you is not the physical presentation of your body. It is the energetic love and light that you walk with and that you exist with in every moment, whether your physical self knows it or not. Does that make sense? Hard to grasp though, right? It's like, oh dear Lord. Esoteric conversation. I love esoteric conversations. But I also love bringing the esoteric into the practical so that we can take a hold of it and be like, well, how do I apply that? Like, I don't know. How do I apply the moment? Is there somewhere on that linear timeline that I can put that moment? Is there some way I can indoctrinate it into that man-made 12-hour thing, 24-hour thing? And the answer is not really, no. We need to acknowledge the difference between the two. And say, well, as long as I'm in this physical body and I'm walking through this physical world and experiencing this physical life, there's things that I will need to do. There are rituals of aliveness that I will need to take part in that honor that human kind of model of linearity. But in the same moment, I can also not lose faith in the moment and in the wholeness that represents. So no matter what happens to me on this linear timeline, no matter whether I am rich or poor, no matter whether I am popular or lonely, no matter whether I'm strong or weak, no matter whether I am healthy or unhealthy in this body, I can always have the moment with me. And in that moment, I am okay. No matter whether I'm facing the loss of a job or a new stressful job, no matter whether I am facing a marriage or a divorce, a lover or an end of a relationship, an argument or an embracing, no matter what I'm facing in this physical world, I can always remember the moment. And in that moment, I am okay. In that moment, I'm more than okay. So what's kind of one of the differences is that in order for me to have an experience, of love found or love lost, of any kind of, new job or losing a job, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to that. So it fits in the linear timeline. I got the job, I had the job, I lost the job. I got the person, I had the person, I lost the person. Right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to that. And so, if the timeline is not real, in the teachings of yoga, the timeline is not real, not really, then what happens on the timeline is also not understood, and therefore not representative of complete reality. If it's not representative of complete reality, then what is it representative of? It's a reflection of our wants and desires. It's a reflection of our ego. Does the ego exist in the moment? Nope, because there's no time for it. There's no time for the ego in the moment. There's no past for it to cling to, no future for it to project onto. There's nothing in the moment for the ego. Because in the moment, you're okay. But the reality, or at least some kind of a reality, is that we are living in a physical presence. We are here. We have this body. We walk with this body every day. No, I walk with my body every day. And as I get older, sometimes it's not an easy jaunt, sometimes. So there is definitely a reality to that. There's a physical reality to it, a world reality to it. And then I say to myself, so what is it that I really want in my life? What is it that my heart compels me to? Does it compel me to continually replay the past, continually anticipate the future, continually base myself in dissatisfaction, with the process of aging or what could have been, would have been, should have been, or any of these types of things that we spend our time on, all these follies that we play with? Is that the way that I wish to remember my life? Or does the moment offer me something different? The moment offers me something different. The moment allows me to be with my body as it's aging and be with it gracefully. More gracefully. Nothing is 100%. But to be with it more gracefully. Eventually, right? Eventually, Cindy, eventually. The moment, and constantly coming back to the moment, allows me to look at the past, and rather than looking at the imperfection of it, look at what I learned from it and accept that as a gift. It allows me to look into the future and to see and have faith that whatever is going to happen is going to teach me, is going to be a gift in its own right. So there's nothing to fear, and there's nothing to dread or to anticipate, because whatever it is that comes my way is going to have purpose to it. So by embracing the moment, by really taking the linear time to meditate, to practice the yoga asana, to be aware of your breathing, to do the things that bring us, they don't bring us into the moment, but to do the things that expose the reality of the moment to us. To do those things, because in that moment I know I'm okay. And I know that that's what's real. And when I'm in that space, when each of us are in that space, we become so much more resilient. So the biggest, most overwhelming situation can happen. And rather than being caught in the struggle and the judgment and the fear, all of the things that we've accumulated over human time, we are in faith. We're in a place of knowing that I am here in this moment for the purpose of being here. Of being here. So if I witness someone who's crying, I can embrace them and have compassion for their suffering. If I witness someone who's hungry, I can be of service in whatever way I can to address their hunger. If there's someone who needs medical help, I can think clearly about what it is that they might need and do whatever I can in order to be of service to them. I don't have to concern myself with the past, and I don't have to project into the future in order to be of service in the moment. All I need to do is be. And part of that being has a component of willingness, has a component of, I guess the word is charity, but that's not really the word. It's more of a unity. It's saying your suffering is also my suffering, and my suffering is yours, so let's work together and alleviate the suffering. Let's be together in that healing. So curing happens over time. Curing happens over time. You have a surgery and you prep for the surgery, you have the surgery, and then there's this process after the surgery. But healing happens in the moment. It needs no time. And all the great teachers, many of the great teachers, have said, enlightenment doesn't happen gradually. The ultimate healing doesn't happen gradually. It happens in a flash. Because the moment isn't gradual. The moment simply is. So when we have an epiphany, when we have an awareness of ourselves, a newfound awareness, like maybe in class, when you put your hands together, you closed your eyes and you started to breathe, it drew the breath down into the depth of the lungs, and it brought a relief to many. Maybe not to all, but to many. And in that relief, there's an aha moment. Oh my God, I can breathe this way. The shoulders release their tension. The mind releases its tension. And suddenly peace is exposed. And in that moment of peacefulness, you know you're okay. Then we hop back over to the linear timeline. There it goes. Out the window. Out the window with the next thought. Is that all making sense? Yeah. So it can be pretty esoteric, it can be pretty abstract to talk about these things and to say, on the one hand, we live in this linear human-made timeline of a year. And you know how false that is this. They actually passed a law for daylight savings time. I mean, hello? Not a law. What are they enacted an act or whatever. They made it permanent. It's like, yeah. It's like, I'm sorry. There's nothing permanent on the linear timeline. That's why it's linear.
I was so frustrated with it. I was like, is this what we're focusing on?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So that right there is proof positive, that what happens on this linear timeline in some instances is heartbreaking and in others is absolutely ridiculous. But none of it is, are we, let me say this differently, we are not seeing any of it with complete clarity from the perspective of being in the moment. Because if we were, we would know the ridiculousness of that, right? And we would know exactly what was needed in a moment of suffering or in a minute of suffering. Suffering doesn't happen in the moment, it happens in the minute. That's interesting too, isn't it? Suffering doesn't happen in the moment, it happens in the minute. Because it needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. But peace doesn't. Suffering has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Peace doesn't. Well, what do you mean? But what about wars? What about strife? What about suffering? Isn't suffering the end of peace? No, it's not. And if you would like a visual for that, you can use the ocean. Because the ocean's natural place is peace. And then the storm comes. The waves come and the ships are tossed about, right? Where does the ocean always resolve back to? The peace. Because the peace never actually left. The superficial components of the upper environment are what cause the appearance of disturbance. It's just like the superficial components of our world is what seems to cause the disturbance within us. And when that disturbance is present, we're like, there's no peace. I can't get peace. I can't have peace. I can't sit quietly. I can't do these things. The reality is that's the opinion of the linear timeline, not the truth of the moment. The truth of the moment is that you are peace. You've just forgotten. Because you're living in a beginning, middle, end phase rather than the phase of truth or the place of truth. It's not a phase, it's a place. So in the Bhagavad Gita and many other texts, scriptures, today, Easter, the resurrection of Christ. Jesus Christ. Jesus, the timeline. Christ, the moment. Oh, yeah. Doesn't that make a lot of sense? Jesus, the timeline. The 36 years? 36? Right? 33? How many? 33? So the 33-year timeline. Christ, the moment. What does the word Christ mean? Anybody know? Translates as light. Radiant. Yeah. But Jesus doesn't translate as that. Jesus lived a linear timeline where he experienced anger and suffering and love and generosity and all the things that we talk about in yoga and in every other tradition. He experienced all these things like any other human being would. Because in those years, he was embedded in that linear timeline. But the difference between him and most people is that he had an understanding that he had dharma. He had purpose within that timeline, which didn't come from the timeline itself. It was from the moment. And that's why he was able to turn fishes and loaves and do all the miracles that he did. It was not because he was living in and existing in this linear timeline mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It was because even though his physical body was part of that timeline, his heart knew the moment. His heart knew the moment. And so they say that man was made in God's image. Woman was made in God's image. Humans are supposedly made in God's image. And if you look at Christ as some aspect of God, then you need to acknowledge also that your journey is similar to Jesus' journey and to Christ's journey. And that the linear timeline is not your truth. It's a temporary space where you've lost yourself. And what's waiting for you is the same thing that waited for Jesus. On a particular day, in a particular minute, your light will be remembered by you. And you will resurrect. Does that mean you leave this physical realm? There's a lot of talks about that. There's a lot of differences of opinion in that. But in several of the scriptures in yoga, it states there's a couple of different ways that happens. And if your karma's all cleaned up and you've taken care of resolving your attachment to the linear timeline, then no, you don't really need to be here anymore unless you choose to be here. And why would you choose to be here? Because beings are suffering. And one of the things that you're doing is making the choice to be of service to them. And so you walk through the world as a light. You walk through the world as a Christ. As a brilliance, as a warmth, as a radiance, as proof of the moment, as proof of the power of the moment. So, in what is his name? The one who wrote Be Here Now. No, not Be Here Now. Oh, yeah, thank you. Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, Eckhart Tolle. What was the name of his book?
The Power of Now. The
Power of Now. Yeah. So people take, the power of now. That means I'm going to get what I want. You know, that means I'm gonna manifest and get. Well, what are you gonna get? Well, I'm gonna get all the things I never had before, and I'm gonna get all the things I want in the future. That's the linear timeline, so it's not real. So when he's talking about the power of now, what he's actually talking about is dissolving that linear timeline, and instead understanding, knowing, coming into the wisdom of the moment. And most certainly Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now, is completely that. It is completely that. 100%. Who cares about yesterday? Well, because they said something that hurt my feelings. Well, If they hurt your feelings legally, there's a justice system to take care of that. If they hurt your feelings emotionally, then that's something that you can take care of. There's counselors, there's all kinds of support out there. Why are you staying stuck there? And really, that's no matter what it was. And that's coming from someone who has survived a lot of abuse. So even that, sitting there and saying to myself, there was a point in my life where I lived in my abuse. I lived in the things that happened to me. I couldn't watch certain shows on television. I had night tremors, all these kind of crazy things. Because that's where I was living, was in the past. But the thing that yoga gave me, the thing that meditation gave me, was the understanding that I don't live in the past. That I actually exist in a moment. And in this moment, I'm fine. I'm okay. Do I have work to do on that linear timeline? Of course I do. We all have karma. Every one of us. But do I have to be stuck there in the darn karma day in and day out? No. Of course not. Instead of that, I can choose the moment and just be and answer the call when I'm called and do whatever I can as I witness humanity and what's going on in this crazy, crazy, crazy world. Do what I can to lessen the crazy, to lessen the suffering. But without striving to fix it, because I can't fix it. I cannot fix it. But if I see a hungry little cat, I can feed it. And if I see a person who needs someone to listen to them, I can listen. And if I see a child who's crying and lost, I can help them find their parent. And I don't have to hold on to that and then tomorrow tell all of you, and then the day after tell all of them, and then continue to tell down the line, because that's not the moment, that's the past. And so I don't know, I guess what I'm hoping is that this conversation is not only bringing into your awareness the relationship that you have to Christ, to the light within your own self, but also the relationship that you have to the moment versus the linear timeline that we're all so darn attached to. And that each and every one of you really are okay. Right now. Right now. And the power of that okayness is immense. It's like, the child's mind will say, I'm going to take that power and manifest wealth. Lots of riches and cars and popularity. That's very immature. It's okay, whatever. You know, there's a fun on the linear timeline. That's whatever it is. But that's immature. Because that power in the moment is so big. It is so immense that not only can it heal you, but it can heal the world. So why settle for money or popularity or power or any of those types of things when you can dedicate yourself and your life to something far bigger than that? Far more precious than that. When you could dedicate your life to unity, to oneness. Separation exists on the linear timeline. And I'm not saying that the linear timeline doesn't have a real impact on our experience. It absolutely does. We live it. You know? Many years ago, when I fell down on the ice, so my husband had just gotten home from surgery. And he had a visiting nurse coming in. And this is like a snowstorm. And I've got to be at the hospital to teach. And I've got to be over at the university to teach. And then I've got to go here. And I've got like a full day. And everything is super icy out. And all I kept saying to him was, oh, I hope she doesn't trip on the ice coming in. I hope she doesn't trip on the ice coming in. I hope. Because it was so icy out. And I was really just worried about her, you know. So she gets there. She gets into the house. She's fine. She's with him. I go to leave. And what happens? I fell on the ice and I landed on my knee. And I sat on the cold ice, holding my knee and saying to myself, I'm okay. I am okay. This is my body that something has happened to. I fell a few moments ago. I didn't just fall, but now the inflammation is happening. And I followed the process of what was going on. And eventually I was breathing and doing all these things. I got up, I got in my car and I went because I couldn't cancel. So I got in the car, I went to the hospital, and I'm sitting there teaching, and my knee is swelling, and I can feel it swelling, And then I go over to the university, and I do what I have to do there, and by now I'm like limping madly, And then I go back home, and the nurse leaves, and Ed's in his recliner, and I had a recliner next to him, and I sat in the recliner, and I looked at him, and I said, we're going to be here together for a couple of days. It's time for the moment. But so these things really do impact us in the linear phase of things, right? They do. And we often make it much harder than it has to be. But when we surrender to the moment, the sweetness of that injury wasn't that I was injured in my physical body. It was that there was this thought in my mind that I really just wanted to be with my husband. And I was given that gift. And for about 3 days, we just kind of sat together. Granted, I got up and I cooked and I hobbled around a little bit to get what was needed, but, use the restroom, whatever. But our time, everything was eliminated from those 3 days. And time stood still for us. And time can stand still for each and every one of us. Because time isn't real, right? We get to pick and choose. We get to say what it is that we're going to invest in and what it is that we're not. So we will either invest in the nightmares of the past or the glories of the past, or we will invest in the possibilities of the future and the projections of the future, or we will complain about this kind of day, or we will settle into the abundance of the moment and recognize that even when we're resisting it, even when we're going against it, even when we're saying, denying it, that it is the truth and it will be known eventually to us. Eventually. I'm going to do a time check. So any reflections or questions on that right now? Any reflections or questions? Yes?
Kind of just regarding the linear timeline, I had an epiphany this week where I realized I was using the word anxiety when I really just meant anticipation, which was huge. I mean, it's not, because I wasn't anxious, and I was using, and that just makes you anxious when you use those sorts of that languaging. So being able to adjust my vocabulary in that way has made a difference too, because I think if you're talking about time, people then take that on too that are around you.
Absolutely, yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really great, it's available on the web. I don't remember what book it comes from, but we have a tendency to lump everything into angry, sad, happy. 3 words. But the reality is that there's I don't even know, there's probably 500 different emotions. Mm-hmm. So there's this chart that you can get. You can download right off the internet, and it's got 172 of them listed or something, and it says, don't settle for these 3 when you've got this abundance, Mm-hmm. Figure out what it is you're actually feeling and then address it. It's not anger, it's frustration. It's not anger, it's confusion. It's not anxiety, it's something else. It's anticipation. Yeah. And that brings you into the moment, because now you got to really kind of sit with that and be like, well, if I'm calling my anticipation anxiety, what else am I mischaracterizing? And what is that bringing to me in this life, right? If I say I'm poor, I'm poor, what is that bringing to me in this life? If I say I've failed, what is that bringing to me in this life? It's very interesting. I always like to make the audible comparison. The word poor in the West means that you're lacking something, you're lacking wealth. But the word purna in Sanskrit means wholeness. Right? Something, that's another conversation. And again, the two words are not necessarily related, but they sound the same. But one means everything, and the other means you're nothing. Right? Yes?
You mentioned about using certain tools in order to be in the now. Could you repeat those?
Say that one more time.
You just mentioned just different ways to be in the now, to like train yourself to be in the now, like so you're not in the past or the future. I know you said one was breathing, and then you could just repeat them. I don't remember.
Yeah, absolutely. All the yoga techniques.
Oh.
Yeah, all of them. Mindfulness techniques. So mindfulness techniques will bring you closer. They bring you into the minute, into the couple of seconds that are currently passing. They'll bring you closer. But meditation, particularly, right? Meditation, it frees us from time. Have you ever sat and you start your meditation, like this morning we started with japa. And so we're chanting Om Shri Durgaye Namaha, Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. Did that for 300 and some odd times, and then sat silently. And in the silence, as long as you don't fall asleep, in the silence, there's nothing. There's nothing. And initially for the undisciplined person, that's a bit of a jarring experience. It's like, I don't know where I am. The proprioception doesn't kick in there, because you can't anchor to something physical. So I actually had a student one time who asked me, he said, first time meditating, he said, was I floating? Like, I know that sounds really weird, but was I like levitating? Because I like didn't feel the ground. I was afraid to open my eyes. And I was like, nobody's ever floated away, don't worry. I know. I like to have fun with that. So meditation is the key. That is the one, because it frees you from the physical, and it brings you directly into the Kashik field, which is the field of prana and consciousness. And in meditation, you lose your body, you lose your bones and your muscles, your connective tissues, you lose your heartbeat, you lose your breath, you lose it all. It dissolves away until nothing. There's nothing. There may be a tiny little remnant of, I'm somewhere. But that's even like so opaque. It's just like not even there. So meditation is the key. But you can also practice your yoga asana, your breathing, your pranayama, your concentration practices, tratak meditation. Well, tratak concentration. You can practice by reading the scriptures. You can practice whatever your sadhana is, your yoga practice is, your spiritual practice. Those are things that will inevitably prepare you for the moment. And why do you have to be prepared for the moment if the moment is so natural to you? Well, because you become so bound to the world. You become so bound to the world. What do they say before they pull the Band-Aid off? They say, breathe and prepare yourself. Right? Hold on. Why do they, in the olden days when they didn't have like anesthesia, they put a spoon in their mouth, a wooden spoon. And they said, bite down on the spoon, prepare yourself, before I free you of this, whatever it is that they were freeing them from. So we prepare ourselves with many different things. With service, we prepare ourselves with scriptural study. We prepare ourselves with behavioral modifications. And we say, well, if to be in the moment, I need to be less attached to the linear, then I need to stop behaving in ways that make me attached. Oh, Lord. So what does that mean? Well, I got to let go of my violence, first of all. Because violence is just a hotbed for guilt and attachment and vengeance and all these other things and storytelling, right? So I got to let go of my violence. And then I have to let go of what else? I got to let go of my passion. Like, take that with a grain of salt, but I have to let go of my passion. What kind of passion? The passion that attaches me. The passion that says, like, you know, you see a person and you're like, that's an attractive person. That's going to be mine. I'm going to own that. Yeah, and everybody in this room has had a relationship where you thought you owned the other person. Totally, we all do. It's part of our humanness. The ego aspect of the humanness is to feel like we own something. And even if that's a harsh word, it's still true, because the moment that they weren't in your sight, the first thing you thought was, where are they? Are they thinking of me? That's ownership, as if they should have no other thought. Right? That's a form of ownership. So we have to let go of our passion. We have to let go of our fear. Because our fear, oh Lord, what does the fear do to us? It binds us to this physical body in knots. In knots and throws it does. Ties us up. And keeps tightening those knots until we can't breathe. Until we're so afraid of everything. And I was talking to my grandson the other day. My grandson, and I, after we had a family dinner with everybody, the three of us went and got ice cream. And talking to my grandson, and we were saying how he's 13 now. I said, so do you have your friends come over often? And he's like, yeah, not really, not because of COVID and stuff, you know, people still aren't gathering. And I was like, oh, I said, well, how do you stay in touch with them? And he said, well, you know, we do a lot of online stuff. And I was like, well, that's, you know, thank goodness for there's online community, right? But then we started having this really great conversation. I said, well, you know, Christopher, when I was your age and even younger, like 10, you know, it was like, go out and don't come home until 5 o'clock. Do not step foot in this house until dinner is on the table, and do not be 1 minute late. You know? And it was like, I don't want to see you. Go. But nowadays, I must see you always. I will not take my eyes off of you. Why? Fear. Let them go play. You know? Because what happens when they don't do that? What happens when they don't is they become fearful too. And what kind of life are they going to have if they can't let you out of their sight because you can't let them out of yours? What kind of life are they going to have? Just think about what their linear timeline is going to be full of. When will they rediscover the moment? If they're being told that this world is nothing but something to fear. Yeah. And that's really kind of a predominant mindset. I'm so grateful my kids don't, you know, they're like, my daughter is one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Carefree is definitely one of them, but adventurous. That's the word. Adventurous souls that I know, you know, and like, you know, she brings her kids out to the punk rock shows and stuff, you know, it's so cool. They all went to go see Dropkick Murphys together and stuff. And that's fantastic because he'll be worldly, you know. She wants him to travel. She wants him to go here and to go there and to have these experiences. And absolutely, absolutely. When the past is healthy, to some degree, we have less of a tendency to grasp onto it. Unless the present, and by present I mean this year, is not so healthy. Then we look back at the past and say, well, the past was so good. I really want that now. Then we grab onto it because we don't know how to be in this year. And if the future doesn't look so great, then we anticipate that and we grasp onto that too. So we need to somehow empower our children, our grandchildren, and ourselves to stop it, to just stop that. And to stop worrying about so-and-so, what so-and-so said at such and such function last 3 years ago. You know, it's not happening now. And what is happening now, change the conversation. Change it so that we're closer to this minute, this hour, this day. If we can all come on board to being in the present time, then we will be empowered to develop a world that is more conducive to the moment. We have work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. But it doesn't start with anyone but you. And that's the important thing to know. It does not start with anyone else. It starts with you. So no more ragtags about what the politicians are or aren't doing. We know 3/4 of them are crazy. We get it. We know it. We know that half of them aren't honest. We get it. Totally. But you can't do anything about that. So stop investing in it. And invest in what you can do, which is building a foundation for your community, for your family, and for yourself that isn't part of the crazy or the dishonesty. We start small. That's what grassroots is all about, right? They say trickle down is BS, right? It doesn't happen. Trickle down is BS. And as long as the type of power structures are in place that are in place currently, then the average individual is not going to benefit from those systems. It just doesn't happen. And by benefit, I mean live a decent life, like have food and shelter. So grassroots comes about, and it says you have small groups that do things differently in spite of what the bigger group is doing. And eventually, if there's a benefit there to be had, other people will join in, and that grassroots will grow and grow, and then the bottom will overtake the top. Then the bottom will overtake the top. But it doesn't start by looking out there and saying, you all need to change. No, it starts by saying, what can I do? What can I do? And we will do the best work when we are not attached to the past in an unhealthy way, the present in an unhealthy way, or the future in an unhealthy way. We will do our best work when we keep our heart in the moment and our mind open to the possibilities. Any other questions or reflections right now? Yeah? Are we good? Yeah?
You put things in perspective because I can go way out there.
We all can. We're all dangling on the edge of a cliff. We really are. I look at those people. This boggles my mind. Those people who they string the guideline between two mountains, and they attach their little tent, and then they do. Yeah.
It's like a slack line.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have a quick thought. So if you live in the present and in the now, and I get the whole past thing, I get that. But the future, you kind of have to plan a little bit for the future. Figure out, so I'm not exactly sure where that boundary is.
So there's certainly, as we live in the physical world, it certainly is okay to think about where you want to be a year or 10 years from now. Absolutely. But you're not guaranteed that any of what you plan is going to happen. You're just not guaranteed that. So if you're not guaranteed that what you're planning for is going to happen, then why are you investing 75 to 95% of your energy into it? Why are you not investing that energy into now instead? Right now. I'll give you my own example. Sure, I saw myself growing old with my husband. We would talk about it all the time. We're going to have matching rocking chairs. We were corny that way. We're going to have matching rocking chairs. He would have his riding lawnmower because he hated mowing the lawn, unless he had a rideable lawnmower, and then he loved it. So there were visions of the future. Sure, there were. But there was also something that said, the future isn't guaranteed. So don't put all your eggs there. Because if you don't take care of this linear present, then the future isn't going to happen no matter what you're visualizing. It's now that you have to take care of. It's today. And what you do today will shape that future. And it's because that's the wisdom or the philosophy that guided my relationship with my husband. I think that's why I can look and say, I know he's not here and we're not going to have those rocking chairs. But you know what? We had a beautiful relationship when we had it. And we're just simply not meant to be that right now. It's not meant to be. He was here for as long as he was meant to be here. And I'm really 100%, 110% okay with saying that. Because in that moment, we were both so present to each other. And in that linear present time that we had together, we were together. So there's really no regrets, Take care of your linear present. And the linear present will take care of you. But keep projecting into the future. But what do I need then? What will I need then? What will I need then? And you won't have what you need then because you're not giving yourself what you need now. So you will not have what you need then. Because you're not giving yourself what you need now. It's a great question. What do you need now?
I need rest.
And you gave yourself a little bit of that earlier, which was wonderful.
You gave a verbal prompt, and I was like, oh, it is okay.
100%. It has to be, right? What do you need right now? Rest? There's a lot of women in the room. I expect to hear that from everybody. Yes, yes, yes. I hope you give yourself that rest. In about 5 minutes. What do you need right now?
Maybe not rest, because I do sleep a lot, but just downtime, breathing.
Yeah. What do you need right now?
Just peace of mind, to let go of what can be and come back to presence.
What do you need right now?
Not so much as needing, but this week I realized I am okay.
And what do you need right now?
Along with rest, just more time.
Okay, let's go over this one more time. Linear timeline fixed. Moment endless.
I need more endless.
But you can't do what you do on the linear timeline in the moment. Yeah, that's fun. Thank you for that. What do you need, Noelle?
I'd say detachment, and so I can get some peace.
Yeah, wonderful. Take care of your needs. And your answering your own needs will take care of you. Linear timeline fixed. There's no more than 24 hours in a day. I don't care how many laws they pass. Okay, there's just not. Pretty soon they're going to go to like the 48-hour day, and we're all going to be like, really? Oh, man, so fun. So fun. All right, let's sit tall. We'll close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. And just keep breathing mindfully. And with each breath you take, let an attachment fall away. Let attachments of the past fall away. Know that you are here in this present time. Let the attachments to the future fall away. Know that you are here in this present time. No attachment to the past, no attachments to the future. Know that you are here in this present time. And now let the present time begin to dissolve. Let the present time begin to dissolve. And be in the moment. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll lift our voices in one prayerful Om. Take a breath in. Om. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. Namaste. Hari Om. Jai Mata Di. So good to sit with each and every one of you today. Thank you so much for your presence. Enjoy your lunch, and as you go about the rest of your day, be safe, be happy, travel well, and constantly be the Christ, constantly be the light, constantly be you, the real you. Thank you all.